Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with a review of another older Hasbro Jurassic World figure, one that I have not reviewed previously, one of the Dino Hybrids line. This is the Stegoceratops. Now what's interesting about this is the Stegoceratops was already a hybrid. It was already in the main line of the Hasbro Jurassic World figures, yet we still got a version in the hybrid line. But what's even weirder is they took what was already a hybrid and somehow turned it into more of a hybrid without adding in any other dinosaurs. They just kind of altered the overall appearance to it. So as a whole, this figure is so strange and so confusing and such a mystery to me as far as what in the heck they were thinking, that I'm clueless. I really don't know why they would even bother including something like this in the main line and the Dino Hybrids line, because they already again had it in the other line. So it's weird. It doesn't make any sense to me. And what's even weirder is the fact that, again, as I already mentioned, they altered the overall appearance to it to look even more hybridish, making it look like they took a hybrid thinking it was not a hybrid and then turned it into a hybrid, even though it was originally a hybrid already. I don't know. Either way, we do have this very, very strange version of the Stegoceratops in the Hasbro Jurassic World line. Definitely looking a bit more exaggerated than the standard version that comes in the main line. Also, a good bit more interesting as far as the coloration goes, because the standard versions, I think, were green and brown, if I remember correctly. And obviously, we have a way different color scheme for this one. This one is much flashier as far as the colors go. So if you start up here in the head sculpt of our Stegoceratops, you can see that the skin texture does look okay for being a Hasbro figure. It doesn't look half bad. I feel like the way that it was created somehow has taken some of the detail away, and maybe the original sculpt was somehow maybe more impressive, because it looks like it does have some decent detail to it. It's just almost hard to really make out how impressive it is. You start to see it looking a little more impressive as you lead up into this exaggeratedly large frill, but you have all sorts of variation to the sizes and even the kind of like the style of the scales up here in the frill. You also have a good bit of variation of color to the face of this one, as we have a light blue for the primary body color, but then you have some darker blues that show up here and basically sporadically pop in and also overtake the majority of the frill of the dinosaur. We also have some spikes kind of leading up through the center of the frill, and they have kind of like a yellowish orange, but kind of in like a metallic sort of a tone that run up, and then there's also like a brighter orange spot on the tips of all of those horns. You see pretty much the same thing here for the main horns of the dinosaur. As you lead out, you have that same kind of like yellowish orange sort of tone that transitions to a different variation, a darker variation of orange, and it looks pretty nice, pretty smooth transition. There's also some decent detail within the horns, nothing overly amazing, but some okay detail. We have pretty much the same colors here for the beak as well as the nasal horn, but the beak isn't painted very good. You can see the beak kind of has missing paintwork where it should be running along the side of the skin right here. It basically cuts off and looks a little sloppy. And worse yet, the lower part of the beak doesn't have any paintwork at all. The eyes are painted also in pretty much a similar way to the horns as far as like the mixtures of oranges and yellows, but they do look really good. There's also a white spot in there to sort of give it eye shine and a very small black pupil, but we can see that there is a good bit of paintwork on the figure, which is definitely nice to see. Like, it actually has a fairly complete painted look except for one area, but as you move up and over the top of the frill, you can see all of those spikes basically leading around the frill are all painted again with that same sort of coloration. And when you look down here on the side of the face, you can see more of those darker blues pick up and lead down here. We can see the nostrils and everything sculpted out. Overall, I think the sculpt is okay on this one, but of course now we are on the opposing side, the least dominant side, I would say, which means we do get those classic Hasbro screw holes over here, which again is pretty much to be expected. As you move back here into the body, one thing you will take notice to is the laziness of Hasbro, and that's the fact that all of those spikes leading up and over the frill that look really cool when it comes to the paintwork from the front are unpainted in the back. So I mean, it doesn't really get a whole lot lazier than that, if you ask me. The detail on the back of the frill looks okay, but as you lead further down toward the body, it becomes a lot more muted, unfortunately. You have some okay-looking skin detail here in the neck. You can also see a few areas of sort of articulation, but I think that all has to do with the action feature. As we move up, we do pick up some more variation of color with some really dark blues, even darker than what we see in the face, that just kind of like pattern sporadically through the body right here. And then you also have the plates up here, which feature the same kind of bright metallic sort of color that we saw on the horns and everything, where we have the mixtures of like yellows and oranges and stuff. And again, a very kind of like satin metallic sort of shine. There is some okay detail within the plates as well, and you can see kind of like some nicks and scratches and stuff within the plates, kind of giving them the look of being damaged, which is exactly what they were going for, and I think is a nice touch. But unfortunately, just like with the horns, the insides of the plates are unpainted still, so it doesn't really look that great. We can also see that that area is a separate piece that was applied, and we can see the very obvious seam moving back. But when it comes to articulated dinosaur figures, seams are kind of, to be expected. So even though that isn't an area of articulation, the fact that there is a seam up there isn't such an eyesore when you have seams throughout the entire figure. But you do have an injury here on the side, kind of an area where the stomach has been ripped open. We could sort of see the rib cage in there that is sculpted and painted, and then some reddish areas there kind of replicating like the muscle and stuff. It does have a nice satin shine, kind of a nice gloss coat in there to kind of make it look, like a real legitimate injury. As you move down into the legs, you can see the legs are sculpted pretty decently and actually do feature some nice fine detail to them. We transition to a darker blue as we lead down into the feet, and the nails are painted with a tan, kind of a little sloppy as far as the nail paint goes. Like here, you can really see that they didn't specifically paint out the nails. Well, you could before my camera lost focus, but they actually just kind of painted over the toes and everything. So although it is nice that they did apply nail paint, they applied it really sloppily. Shockingly, though, the paint actually runs under the nails, and considering the overall look of this one and the fact that the paint doesn't usually run on the other side, I'm kind of impressed by that. We do have the Jurassic World stamp back here. This is the last time we saw this in the Jurassic line. Again, kind of like that throwback to the old Kenner JP figures and even the Hasbro Jurassic Park figures, but now with Jurassic World as opposed to Jurassic Park. And you can see some more nice looking skin detail, and even again some kind of like injuries and stuff throughout the course of the figure as you move along. Then we lead out into the tail. The tail does lead up into the air, but unfortunately the plates out here are unpainted, and for the most part the tail doesn't really feature any paintwork except for this little bit on the underside. And that's again where we kind of like fall short of being a fully painted figure, that and the fact that, the opposite sides of certain areas are unpainted. But we lead out here and those plates don't have any paintwork, and neither do the thagomizers as we lead out toward the end of the tail. So it is definitely unfortunate to see so much paintwork added to the figure, but then they get real lazy as we lead out into the tail. We do have the information for the dinosaur in a little bit of an annoying area as well, where it's kind of like right out here in the open. You do have more of the darker orangish tones here on the underside of the dinosaur, which is at least a plus to see a little extra coloration on the figure overall. But it's by no means an award-winning incredible Jurassic World toy, but it is pretty cool, I guess, for what it is. Like, I've always been kind of fond of the Stegoceratops figures from Hasbro. Maybe it's because they're the only ones that have really, provided us with one as far as like an officially licensed Jurassic World toy line, but maybe it's also because some of the Hasbro sculpts weren't half bad. They're not great, but they're not that bad, and this one was okay, although this is the very first time I've ever had the pleasure of adding this weird hybrid of a hybrid version into my collection, so it's pretty interesting to finally see this one in person. As far as the action feature goes, we have a tail that you push down, and as you can see, the head extends out and even kind of tilts a little bit, so it has sort of like a horn striking action feature. But as you can see, as I smack the camera, it's not the strongest action feature in the world, that's for sure. The head also features a little bit of extra articulation right here. You can kind of see how the head can go left and right, and that's because if we move the tail left and right, you'll now see how the head kind of turns left and right. So again, a little bit of an extra action feature there with the figure. Outside of that, the articulation would be the legs, which do go forward and back, but they're kind of stiff, oddly enough. Same deal with the rear legs, again forward and back, a little jerky. Obviously the same case over here. And again, that one's actually pretty smooth. And obviously we have the articulation of the tail as well, which goes up and down and a little bit left and right. Just a little wiggle room, but I don't know if you can really... Yeah, I guess if you pull the head out, you can kind of activate a tail strike action feature back here. But I don't really know if that's what they were going for. I think it's just convenient that, you know, you have to use the tail to operate the head strike, so you can basically just do it in reverse. But still interesting. As far as the size goes, it's pretty much the exact same size as the previous Stegoceratops, which I have reviewed here on the channel, about 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters in length, and the highest point would be the tail at about 4 inches or 10 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pachylovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our Stegoceratops from Hasbro. And you can see, again, if you are familiar with this figure, that it is still pretty much the exact same size as the previous one. But you'll also notice, if you are unfamiliar with that, that it's roughly in the Attack Pack or Danger Pack size range, maybe slightly larger, I would say, but still by no means is this a large figure. And since we have technically reviewed the Stegoceratops in the past, I don't feel like we really need to do a whole lot of comparisons for this one, but as you can see, we have the older version of the Stegoceratops next to the hybrid version, which again, they're both hybrids, but you can see that they are pretty much the same size with maybe just a slightly larger head on the newer one, or on the hybrid version, I should say. So no need to really get into a whole bunch of different comparisons when we've already done that in the past. So this Hasbro Jurassic World Dino Hybrids Stegoceratops figure is kind of fun overall. It's obviously not the greatest figure in the world, but I will say when it comes to the Hasbro Jurassic World line, one of my favorite parts of it was the hybrid line. I don't know why, I just really like those figures. I think that they're probably some of the coolest stuff released by Hasbro in, honestly, any Jurassic line, even though they do still feature a lot of the same negatives that we usually have with Hasbro, like the screw holes and, you know, not really the greatest paint in the world, though some of the Jurassic Park 3 figures actually had really nice paint, but it's still not that bad. It still looks pretty cool for what it is. Just, it's confusing to me why they would take a hybrid and then turn it into even more of a hybrid when they could have just created something else. But at the same time, I guess I can kind of understand from the viewpoint of Hasbro. They already had the sculpt of this, so all they really needed to do was just alter it a little bit and then put it out as a bright, flashy, new, kind of awkward looking, sort of exaggerated version of a previously released Dinosaur. So it is what it is. It's got a pretty decent sculpt when it comes to the detail, but by no means is it, you know, Mattel-like. Like, the detail is not nearly as impressive as what you see nowadays on Mattel figures, but it's, you know, okay for what it is. Like, the detail's there. It's not super muted or anything like that. It does have some very interesting choices for the colors, which again are pretty much what you usually see through the entire Dino Hybrid line from Hasbro. They usually feature a lot of really ridiculous, kind of brighter and weird colors, and we definitely see that on this version. The figure, again, was created in a way where it's very obviously different from the original when it comes to the way that certain aspects of it are sculpted, like specifically the head sculpt and everything, but still looks similar to the older one, so it kind of can fill in with the others as a different member of the herd, but just a very weird, exaggerated version. It also features some articulation and some okay action features that don't really have a whole lot of force, but they work, I guess, for what they are. Still, I'm pretty excited to finally have this one and to be able to add this one to my collection. I've been kind of wanting to get this one for quite a while, so it is nice to now have it here to include in my Jurassic World collection. If you are interested, of course, this figure is long discontinued, so you're going to have to go and resort to eBay or Mercari, somewhere like that, which is exactly what I had to do to get a hold of this one and add it to your collection. So go ahead, go search for it. Hopefully you can find it for fairly cheap, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.